It is no secret that the key to a dramatic painting is dramatic lighting. But what is often not considered is that it's the shadows that are the key to dramatic lighting. After all, a pure white canvas is as bright a light as you can make, but it is certainly not dramatic. It is light flowing across your work, creating light against shadows, that makes dramatic lighting. And it is not simply shadows. It is shadows that are illuminated from reflected light, light singing with color, color that is reflected from nearby brightly lit passages. To illustrate just how light is reflected into shadows, I placed a roll of paper towels on our kitchen table. The left side of the towels is brightly illuminated from light streaming through our kitchen windows. Note how light is reflected onto the shadow side of the roll from the tablecloth. Now I am moving a bright red folder so that red light is being reflected into the shadow. In this position, there is just a hint of red down near the red folder. By turning the folder upright, I can reflect significant red light. If I was painting a still life with an orange, the orange would reflect orange light into the shadow. As long as there is light reflected into the shadows. The brighter the object and the closer the object, the more reflected light. But interestingly, light does not seem to reflect onto the sunlit portion of the roll. Putting the red folder on the sunlit side seems to have little effect on the color of the paper towel roll. So when you are out painting, look carefully. Notice how the light flows through this scene, illuminating the right side of the trees, bushes, grasses, and the road, while the tree trunks create a neat flowing shadow on the ground, bushes, dirt, and road. And look at all that neat reflected light on the left side of the tree trunks. There is actually more color on the shadow side of the tree trunks than on the sunlit side. Put a deer in the small meadow and carefully capture the flowing light and reflected light, and you could have a very dramatic painting. Wow! Look at the color of light reflected into the foreground rock shadows in this photograph. Just imagine this scene if these shadows were dark and dull. The light reflected or bounced from the really bright pink tube really lights up the boy's back. But what about the bright pink in the water below the tube? This is a reflection of the tube in the mirror-like surface of the water. Do not confuse bounced light with mirror reflections. They are two different effects. Take a close look at this scene. Look how the orange light is reflected from the ice plant onto the adjacent rock. There is also a lot of orange light reflected onto the lower part of the tree trunk, probably from the back side of that rock just to the right of the trunk. The reflected light at the top of the tree trunk is more bluish in color, probably simply from the blue sky. This effect can often be observed in nature. Light reflected near the ground is warm in color. Further up the tree, the shadows are bluer. So did I get carried away reflecting orange light onto the rocks and trees in this painting? Well, just how much light to reflect around in a painting is a matter of personal taste. A little overplay can definitely spice up a painting. It is up to you, the artist, to decide just what you want to do. It is time to talk about how to make light and shadows flow across your painting. The first thing you need to decide is the direction of the light. This bowl of fruit, the basis of a still life painting, is illuminated by light shining over my left shoulder. In other words, the light is shining directly onto the bowl. Note that there are very few shadows. The bowl is evenly lit, and the only sense of roundness is from the shape of the bowl. Reflected light is almost non-existent. Remember that light does not reflect on the illuminated sides of objects. In other words, the picture is flat and could be a lot more interesting. Now this is better. I have moved around so that the bowl is illuminated from the left. In other words, this is side lighting. Notice the interesting flow of shadows, adding roundness and form to the bowl and fruit. And notice the reflected light onto the shadow side of the bowl from the red apple and the orange. And the orange light bouncing into the red apple, and especially the light from the bowl back onto the two oranges. I think this could make an interesting painting. I would, however, make the cast shadow on the tablecloth darker. This photo was taken looking into the light. In other words, the bowl is backlit. This may be a little much for a still life, and I think the bowl is rather flat. It does provide some interesting highlights and reflected lights, but the fruit still appears somewhat flat to me. And I think a still life usually works better with side light. An exception is a still life featuring transparent or translucent objects, the kind that the sun can shine through. These types of subjects coupled with backlighting can result in a very spectacular painting.